Hi everyone, it's Kimberly Fawcett Smith. I'm your Conservative candidate for Scarborough Southwest, and today we have Glen Motz from Medicine at Cardston Warner visiting us today. He's the Shadow Minister for Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, correct?
Yes.
Welcome
Thank
to
you.
Scarborough
Great-
Southwest
Great
and
to be here.
to our lovely Bluffers restaurant here at the
Beautiful
beach.
place, Kimberly. Thanks for the invite. It's fantastic.
Bill Blair is the MP here in Scarborough Southwest, former police chief for the City of Toronto. Why has he not been able to come up with solutions for some of the safety issues that we're having here in Scarborough Southwest?
Great question, Kimberly. I think one of the things for people to remember is, public safety issues. Public safety needs to be the number one priority for any government. And that certainly needs to be the case, for this current government, and we see that has failed. Now, Minister Goodale is responsible for public safety, but Minister Blair has border security, and obviously with this riding, and he has been tasked by the Prime Minister to look at, guns and gangs and gang violence, and he had a handgun consultation. Now, the Liberal government introduced a bill called C-71.
Yes.
And that bill was their hallmark legislation, as they called it, to deal with the gun and gang problem in urban Canada. And everybody would agree that, that gun violence, gang violence, is something that we need to address. However, C-71 does absolutely zero to deal with the gun violence going on in Toronto or Surrey, BC, or any place in between. It targets law-abiding Canadian firearm owners, and Canadian firearm owners have never been the issue with gun and gang violence. Disturbingly, this legislation, C-71, makes no mention of gang violence. It makes no mention of gangs in any piece of that legislation. And so the targeting of this legislation, as I said, is to licensed firearm owners, and restricts their movements with firearms, lawfully. And this segment of population is already the most vetted community that exists in Canada, as far as as a segment of population. They're checked every day against the Canadian Police Information System to determine their any criminal involvement. And the criminals who are gang affiliated don't follow the rules already. So having a piece of legislation that targets a segment of population will do nothing to combat gun and gun violence. And then you look at the proposals that came out of this city to deal with gun violence by having a handgun ban, or an assault weapons ban, is some have placed on it. We know that assault weapons, there's no such term in Canada. Assault weapons are referred to military grade weapons, are firearms that are already prohibited in this country and have been for decades and decades. So, all across this country, and all the stats that have come in from the consultation they did themselves, Canadians are saying, no, a handgun ban will not curtail gang violence. We need to use facts and evidence, not emotion, to drive this argument. And there is none. There is no evidence to suggest that any of these bans will have any impact, period, on the reduction of gang violence in this community. You look at the gun buyback program that they had in Toronto.
Yes. Yep.
Kimberly, it sounds great, but what happened? It was a failure. They had to stop it within a week.
Yeah.
It was a failure. They had no gang, criminals returning their firearms to the police department.
They had gun owners.
They had legal gun owners who saw an opportunity to make some money off of some older firearms that they had. It was a failure, and it didn't do anything to public safety. And that sort of posturing is nothing that, a government should never be involved in any of that. And so, I can go on and on about C-71. I've traveled across the country talking about it and getting feedback from police communities and courts and prosecutors about it, and stakeholders from coast to coast on it. And it's pretty overwhelming. The evidence is quite clear that A, law-abiding gun owners are not the problem. B, a firearms ban will not solve the problem. And as a response, our leader Andrew Scheer and Conservatives have come out with a plan toward a safer Canada that targets those or focuses its attention toward those individuals who are gang connected. It wants to strengthen some of the criminal code and sentencing requirements. It puts resources back in the police community. And we know from the meetings that you've had and that I've had with our policing agencies that they want to know where the money went. The Liberals promised $500 million to gangs and guns back in
Correct.
2017 or 16, whenever it was. And
Never
then that was
delivered.
reduced to 327, then it was reduced to 218, and then there was a $50 million bounced around, and we don't know what's been given to whom because no one knows where the money went, or if they've even dished it out. So, we're committed as Conservatives, as you know, to make sure that our policing community has the resources they need to focus on gun and gang issues, and also to deal with the flow of firearms. As you know,
Yes.
the flow of firearms is not from the illegal firearm owners; it's from those who smuggle across the border. And we know that there's some porous
Areas,
in our border, and we need to empower CBSA to work with our law enforcement community to make sure that those things are shored up.